Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Tony Penny, and I'm the Chief Learning Officer here at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute. Now I'm going to ask you to please rise and join me in welcoming our honored guests, and please remain standing for the presentation of colors and the Pledge of Allegiance by the Royal High School Air Force Junior ROTC. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and please be seated. Now, before I introduce our honored guests here today on stage, I want to take just a moment to recognize some of our guests that we have in the audience with us today. First of all, if we could just give a big thank you to the Royal High School Junior ROTC program for that. Thank you so much. I also want to give a big thank you to our partners at the Medal of Honor Foundation. We've been holding this forum each year since 2011, so to Kathy Metcalf and all of your team at the Medal of Honor Foundation, all the fine work you do in educating and sharing the stories of the recipients, thank you so much for being here today. I also want to thank our partners in all sorts of different learning activities here, but especially in this partnership, and they've become kind of a third part of this partnership, which is our friends at the Simi Valley Unified School District, who have embraced this curriculum throughout, from K to 12. So to all of I know we have trustees and senior district leadership here, so thank you for coming out today, Simi Valley Unified. From the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation, we have a number of members of our senior staff here. We have Joanne Drake, our Chief Administrative Officer. Thank you, Joanne, for coming out today. Our Chief Development Officer, Mr. Gary Cole. Thank you for coming out today. And our Executive Director and best-selling author, Mr. John Highbush. Thank you for coming out today. I also want to thank, with us in the audience today, we have a man who's no stranger to the foundation, but who does amazing work on behalf of veterans and their families, Mr. Gary Sinise and the Gary Sinise Foundation. Thank you so much. And finally, before I introduce our three guests today, I just want to take just a second. If you are a veteran and you have served our country, please stand so we can thank you for your service. All right, so the theme of our forum this year, so those of you, many of the students in the audience have had a chance to be a part of the character development program that the Medal of Honor Foundation puts out. How many of you have seen some of the videos or done many of the activities as part of the character development program? Excellent, excellent. It makes me happy to hear that. This is one of my very favorite programs, and we're honored to do kind of a live version of the character development program today. So please join me in welcoming our three guests. I'm going to start closest to me and work our way across the stage here. But first we have Sergeant Kyle White. Captain Flo Groberg. And a frequent visitor, Colonel Jay Vargas. Thank you for coming back again, Colonel Vargas. Now, one of the things that the character development program talks about quite a bit is these basics of character, right? And there's six very specific ones: courage, integrity, patriotism, citizenship, commitment, and sacrifice. And so one of the things we know about character is that you're not just born with character. Character is something that's forged. So I want to start, and I want to go back to the early days for each one of you. When you were younger, when you were a young boy, when you were in school, when you were growing up in your family, and I want to find out your personal origins of character. So when you think about some of the things that are most important to you, the values that you have, I'm going to ask you, the first question is, what value of those six really resonates with you most about being something that's important for character? And then where did that come from for you? Was it a person who was in your life? Was it a family member, a teacher, a friend? So I'm going to start with Colonel Vargas, who's been here a couple times before. Colonel Vargas, can you tell us a little bit about which of those character principles is really important for you and where did that come from?
You know, to be honest with you, I love them all. I kind of wish we would add one more to it, but I'm going to start working on that, and I think that's faith. That's kind of missing out of the six because there isn't a military man that doesn't believe in something. Initiative, as far as which is the most important one to me, I think the integrity is very important to me. I know Pat Brady, General Brady, and I kind of argue. He thinks that he's got a different one. But integrity, I think once you learn what integrity is all about, then the other five, and it's a personal opinion, really fall into place. And where did I really start learning about integrity? I am a son of immigrants from this country. My dad's from Spain, my mother's from Italy. I've got, of the four brothers, two served in World War II, one on Iwo Jima, one on the Battle of Okinawa, and Joe served in Korea, and I did Vietnam. But as far as the integrity, I think it came from my own mother. She was, that was one thing that she always demanded of us, was to be very honest, to be forthright, to admit whenever you made a mistake, and to even admit when you did something wrong. And that was probably my first. That was followed by teachers, and I really admire all the teachers that are here. I did teach 1 year, but I loved the teaching part of it. But then the LA Dodgers gave me an opportunity to join the organization, so I got up to Class A ball and almost Double A, but it didn't quite make it all the way. And then I went home totally devastated. And the first one to have met me was some of the coaches that helped me play ball at Arizona State for 4 years. But I thought the world had ended. But when I realized what I was going through at the time, I thought, boy, this is totally the end of the world. But it truly wasn't. It was great parents, great teachers, great coaches just kind of pulled me out of the dump, so to speak. And three brothers, all Marines, talked me into going into the Corps. My mother always wanted me to go into the Navy. She says, you know, you go to the Navy, they sleep on white sheets and big pillows. and she said, don't go in the Marine Corps. Well, she lost that battle because my oldest brother basically through leadership He basically said, it was about a 30-second meeting one Sunday morning. They took me through leadership, the integrity, and so forth, and that stuck with me. Angelo said, if you don't go in the Marine Corps, we'll break your legs. So I did, and finished 30 years of it. But I found integrity to be very important throughout my life, and I'm much older than these two studs here, but the thing is that I became 30 years in the Corps, Secretary for Veterans Affairs for California. I was the Veterans Liaison for President Bush for 19 Western states, and integrity was always in everything that I did in business. And without that, let me tell you, you'll fail. You have to be very honest with yourself. The 3 golden keys that were given to me, if I can just, and then I'll close off with this, is it was given to me by my brothers. Basically, they said, look, you're going to go into the military. You're going to go into the Corps. We're going to give you 3 golden keys to take with you. And one was always set your standards high. Set some reasonable goals that you can reach. Always take care of your people. And the third one was pretty tough, especially in combat and even in peacetime when you're in command of anywhere from, I had up to 5,000 Marines at one time. And that is, don't ever ask anyone to do anything that you wouldn't do yourself. That's tough. That third one was tough. But I found that to be very valuable in my career to this very day. Now, have I totally settled down? I'm in my 3rd retirement. And I was trying to retire, but the Commandant of the Marine Corps and SecDef has me going around the country, giving motivational talks. And I do talk about integrity as one of the most important ones. And the gentleman that's really helped all of us, especially me, over the 13 times is Gary Sinise has been so valuable to all the Medal of Honor recipients by allowing us to come out at his many shows that he has throughout the United States and outside the United States. And basically, it gives us an opportunity to talk to students, to the military, active duty, reserves, and so forth. And again, it's all integrity and that I preach out there. And basically, the mission of that task that I'm doing today, like Flo and Kyle, is that we're really reaching out to our fellow veterans and those of us that we have served with in each of our branches of services and getting them to come forward if they have any kind of a problem with post-traumatic stress or any kind of a suicide business. But that's it. Integrity is the most important to me.
Okay. Oh, thank you. What about?
Thank you.
So,
Stole mine.
I stole yours.
Jeez. Obviously integrity is the most important one in my opinion, if you had to pick one in priorities, but they're also important to each other. They all complement each other and create a whole holistic approach in terms of success. So I'm not going to go with integrity again, and I was in between citizenship and courage. Obviously, as an immigrant and naturalized citizen, citizenship is a big one for me. But if I think about my life and the people that I was surrounded by and what has happened throughout the different stages of my life, I think courage is a big one. And the reason behind it is because every single day you have to challenge yourself and do something that potentially doesn't feel comfortable. Coming into a country, not speaking the language, having to go to an American school and be part of ESOL, and really adjusting, adapting, evolving, and dealing with different folks, that was something that really allowed me to grow as an individual a lot faster than potentially some of my peers. But throughout my life, I had to make decisions. Whether or not they were smart or successful, it doesn't matter. Every decision that I've made, I'm accountable for, whether they were good or bad. I've made mistakes in my life. I wasn't always a good person, but I was accountable. And it takes courage to face your reality at times. People talk about how courageous we are for serving our military. Military, that was the easy part. When you go out there in combat and you're faced with a situation there's really usually not a good outcome. It's a lot easier to be courageous than to be a coward, because people live when you're courageous. People die when you're a coward. So you don't have a choice. But you're not courageous because you're going to do something no one else would do. You're just courageous because you put on a uniform and you decide to serve your nation. That goes the same with our teachers. That goes the same with our police officers, our doctors, our lawyers. Every single profession pays a purpose. And it takes courage. Who will you be? Will you do the right thing when doing the wrong thing potentially could bring you success, fame, or just an easier path? Will you stand up to that bully at school? Will you report something that's going wrong around you, fully knowing that potentially the consequences of your action would be exile from certain groups or certain opportunities? But every night, I'd rather go to bed, when I put my head down, I'd rather go to bed with a clear mind, knowing that I did the right thing, than feeling guilty because I wasn't strong enough to stand up for the right thing. I'll tell you a quick one. It's funny because it's a political one, but it's not. I'm a Republican. I went and spoke at the DNC this past year. I took a lot of heat for it. A lot of my friends, who I thought were friends, said some pretty mean things. But I had courage to stand up and to go talk about veterans. That's what I did. For 2 minutes of my speech, it's all about veterans. Because I don't care if you're a Republican, a Democrat, Libertarian, Green Party. To me, we're all the same. We're all Americans. And one thing that we all have in common, we should have in common, is the support of our troops, the support of our men and women who put on uniform and volunteer to deploy overseas and serve our nation to the best of our abilities. And so when I came home and I saw my wonderful social media pages and messages, and I had some good ones too, I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't bothered by it. I went to bed like a baby at night. And if I lost friends over the course of that decision, then so be it. I did something that I felt was right. I own it. I'll live with it. And so life's all about making decisions and having the courage to live by those decisions. Own it.
Oh, thank you.
Good job, Flo. Good job.
I always like these conversations because we're all, like-minded. We know the same materials and stuff like that. And so when we get to the last person, it's like, well, what do I say now? Yeah, integrity, that's what it is. Kind of touching on this subject, I have a few experiences I'd like to share with you. And unfortunately, it does relate to integrity and courage, but more personal courage that I'd like to highlight. It was a long time ago that I was in, you guys' shoes as students in grade school. And a lot of people ask me, what type of student were you? And, I always hesitate to answer that question truthfully, but I'd be the one that's in the back, getting the talking to from the teacher because I was disruptive. I was definitely not a good student, I'd say, going up until high school, and then you kind of realize in high school, it's like, well, okay, my future kind of depends on my effort here, so I might want to, kind of get that in check. But in my case, not saying this is going to happen to any of you, but it was too little too late for me, and I didn't make it into college. But one experience I have was kind of related to integrity. It was in, I think, 6th grade, and also kind of personal courage ties into it as well. But, best part of elementary school is recess, right? I mean, everybody remembers that. So back then, it was like, you play kickball, tag, whatever you have. And I remember one time we were, playing kickball or something, and however it happened, I got a little mad at a classmate. I kicked the ball. It went, just this perfect arc, and this kid dodged it, and it hit one of the teachers just right in the back of the head. And I was, instantly as a sixth grader, the color just drains out of your face, and you're like, oh man, I'm in trouble now. And I remember them turning around and being like, who did it? And teachers are great. I love teachers, but I did not like that teacher. She was but you guys don't know anything about that. And I remember she just yelled, like, who was that? And, everybody, all my friends that I'd made, from kindergarten up, they're doing the, pointing out, like, it was this guy. And I remember, I was like, yeah, I did it. And so I told them, and yeah, I got in trouble because, I was doing something I wasn't supposed to. I took my punishment, but it kind of showed me something. I know the people that I, valued as friends at that time, instantly, dined me out the second possible, negative consequence could happen to them. And it just kind of, at even such an age like that, I knew that wasn't the kind of person I wanted to be. If I did something wrong, I'm going to take responsibility for it. And that, I went home, I told my parents, and, after I was grounded for, it was 2 months or something like that, I still stood by my decision. I was still proud of being the guy who owned up to what I did wrong. And I had no regrets about that. And that followed me throughout my childhood and into the military, because if I said I was better in the military than I was in school, I would be lying again. One thing I did learn in the military is how to do a great push-up, because I did a lot of them. Yeah. And so, but, just kind of looking back on those things, I always remember that one experience in grade school, and kind of how, throughout my military career, even in my job now, if something falls through the cracks and it's somehow my fault, then hey, you know what? That's my fault. I take whatever comes with it, move forward, learn from it, and then continue learning, because that's what we're always doing. I had another one kind of about related to kind of the integrity aspect. Was we were in Afghanistan, and for the initial part of our tour, it was 14 months, nothing had happened. We didn't see any enemy, didn't see anything. And so one time, it was, let's say, early October, we had this hailstorm go through, and it made this nice, couple inches of hail on the ground. So naturally, as soldiers and, with no supervision around, we decided, okay, we're gonna have ice ball fights, because that's kind of like snow, right? And we were having a fight, and it was the whole unit was involved. It was a pretty good time. And then one of our leaders, decided to open the door of, where his quarters were, and he got drilled right in the face. And it was one that I threw to, and I made it was one of my best friends, Sean Longevin, who's killed in the ambush in 9 November 2007. He was right in front of that door, and he had gotten me a few times, so I put extra ice on that one, and I lobbed it and drilled him right in the face. And it was another one. I mean, this guy, Sergeant Stockard was his name. He's about 5'4", bald head, and it's just like, we used to call him the pit bull, because he's just no facial expressions until he just lose his mind. And so this is in the middle of the night, like 1 a.m., he's screaming, and it's like, yeah, I did that. And so, probably 200-300 push-ups later, I was doing my punishment still. So, but just the overall, those lessons learned, I've just never forgot those experiences where I went back on what I believed in and what I knew was right, and took that action. And I always think about those things.
Thank you.
One more little thing. So my father had served, and my grandfather as well. And when I was going to approach my parents about enlisting, I initially was going to go in the Marine Corps. like Jay down there. And when my dad was Green Beret, near the tail end of Vietnam, and I told him, hey, I'm gonna go join the Marines. They said they can put me in a tank. It's gonna be great. And I'm not gonna repeat what he said, but he had the most colorful reasons on why I wasn't gonna be a Marine. And so, Jay, I'm sure it was great, but my dad said I had to use my brain for a living, so.
I'll get you.
So we heard which values were important to you, and I think one of the things that students, they look up on stage and they see you and they see that you're one of the recipients of the Medal of Honor, right? There's fewer than 80 living recipients at this point, and that what that means about honor, what that means about bravery. And I think a lot of the students put you on a pedestal and think, oh my gosh, I could never display those sorts of virtues. So what I'd like to do is think about, you all mentioned, Jay, you talked about falling short, and you talked about your mother and the expectations she had for you in terms of integrity. Was there ever a time where you fell short? We heard from Kyle about his experience with projectiles and how that went wrong a couple of times. So was there any time where you fell short and you thought about what your mother might think, and what did you do at a time like that?
Gosh, there was a bucket full. But at breakfast this morning, I told Kathy a story of, I'm Catholic, and went to Mass, many, many times, especially during World War II. When you have two brothers and went away for 4 years, you go to Mass every morning and light candles. It didn't matter what the weather was like and so forth. But there was one morning, whenever my mother went to communion to receive the host, I always had to go with her. And it was this one time that and just getting back to integrity, that I stayed and sat in the pew. And as she got up, she got out to the aisle and noticed that I wasn't going with her. And she gave me that Italian look that only Godzilla could give to somebody. And she says, what have you done? And there was the integrity right in front of me. And I said, she said, come on, I want to hear about this either now, before we go to communion, or after, why you're not going to communion. Well, I had borrowed some Coke bottles out of this outdoor machine one night, and about 2 cases. Well, I put a nickel in there. That's how old I am. And the Cokes just kept coming out. And Paulie Reynolds and Ronnie Tucker and all of us going down the street with, I don't know how many Coke bottles you can get into your jackets and your pants and so forth. But when I got home, I was told that we were in trouble. All of us were. And it was getting back that integrity, that was probably one of the worst things I ever did in my life, and I'm lying to you, was stealing Coke bottles. And I wasn't stealing, I put a nickel in there.
Hey,
That's
right.
about it.
Yeah. And a question to you, Flo. You talked about courage, and you talked about how sometimes making that easy decision is not the courageous decision, is not the right decision. Is there, you look back, a point where you look back and you think, oh man, in this particular case, I took the easy way out, and I wish I could go back and do that differently?
Well, I don't know. Took the easy way out. I guess I'm trying to think about that, because I feel like every decision I've ever made in my life is the wrong decision. So, except join the Army, get married next year, and serve and really finish up school. That's a tough question. I think really I'd like to revert and change that question a little bit and talk about the fact that when you brought up the medal and you talked about what it represents and how it honors us, and I see all these kids here, and you talk about how you should put us on a pedestal. Do not put us on a pedestal. And if you do, you better understand that you have every opportunity in the world to surpass us in everything that you do. I am an immigrant. I grew up in the French government, after I received the medal, said that kid from the ghetto makes it all the way to the White House, right? I didn't speak this language. I came here. We weren't born with money. I never met my biological father. But that wasn't an excuse for my family. That was not an excuse for me. I came here and I worked hard. Why? Because I got myself the great mentors. When I made mistakes, which I made mistakes all the time, I learned from these mistakes and never made the same mistake again. But also because I believed in myself. I worked hard, behind the scenes. I was a track athlete, got a scholarship at the University of Maryland. And the reason I got a track scholarship is because when my competitors were sleeping, I got up at 4:30 in the morning and I went for that 18-mile run. I competed. I was hungry. But I also didn't want anyone to tell me no, because too many people in my life had told me, you will never be able to accomplish this. How did they know? Why would they know? And when I failed, instead of crying and feeling sorry for myself, even though I did it for a little bit, we all go through that, I looked at the opportunity and I learned from it. I took the experience and I grew from it. And I challenged myself. Here's the thing, I never wanted the medal. None of us ever wanted the medal. That represents usually the worst day of your life. But when I stood on that stage next to the President of the United States, right before he put the medal around my neck, the only thing I could feel at that specific moment was shame. Shame. I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed that someone would put me on this stage and call me a hero when 4 of my brothers didn't come home that specific day, when the Gold Star families are right in front of me, and they're there to support me. But I also realized at that moment that I had the greatest opportunity in the world, which was to return the favor that I was given, whether it's through God or the men and women that I fought with, which was to make sure that every single day for the rest of my life, I live with a purpose to do more. I live with a purpose to make sure that every day when I wake up, it's not about me. It's about everyone around me. It's about our nation. It's about making sure that we earn every single breath. You can do the same. And you do not, remember, do not have to put on a uniform and join the military. Serve your community. Serve your family. Start with one thing. It's not about you. It's about being a good person. It's about picking up others when they're struggling. It's about believing in yourself when you think all is lost. And I tell this to the Miami Dolphins head coach, because he's a good friend of mine, Adam Gase. I say, brother, when you hit rock bottom, it's a good thing, because you can't go any lower. So just enjoy that moment and let's get back up. And that's the same thing that you can do in life. And to me, that's what this medal represents. It represents all of us. It represents our nation. It represents all the struggles that we go through and the adversity that we have to overcome every day. But this medal belongs to all of us. I believe that we're couriers. But do not put me on a pedestal. I will never be better than any of you. I just can only be your peer and your equal.
Flo hit a couple of bullets. Flo hit a couple of bullets that are very important to all of us, and especially to me. And when I travel throughout the country talking to the students, the one thing that I was told as a young pup is that, number one, always be yourself and believe in yourself. And he hit the important bullet of all, and that is to believe in yourself. Don't try to be someone that you really aren't. But when you believe in yourself, you can accomplish anything. But be yourself. You know, don't try to be like someone that is a movie star or something like that. God's given you a life, and He has given you a blessing to go forward it's your life. And believe, let me tell you, it goes fast. So really grab hold of your education, learn as much as you can. And don't be afraid to thank your teachers. You know, that's one thing that I've noticed in a lot of our educational schools, that very seldom will you'll see a student go up to a teacher after the end of the presentation and say, thank you very much. How many of you have done that? Ask yourself that. Have you ever gone up to your teacher afterwards and said, great presentation today? Or,
when I wanted to get
or you can, don't be afraid to go up and say, horrible presentation today. It's be yourself and believe in yourself. Flo hit the bullseye. To me, that's one of the most important things. And believe in your supreme being, whether it's, everyone has someone up above that you should believe in. But I tell you, believing in yourself is the key.
Thank you. I want to build on that, and I want to ask this question to you, Kyle. So one of the things I've heard both of you talk about is to me, it relates to the idea of sacrifice, right? You're sacrificing yourself, you're sacrificing the me for the bigger ideal, whether that bigger ideal is the way we serve our country or the way that we honor those who served with us. And that's quite a responsibility. Right, when you receive the medal and the president's putting the medal around you, it sounds like that becomes kind of a moment of almost profound and intense responsibility for you. And so, Kyle, I was wondering, for you, how do you feel that? How do you feel as someone who wears the medal, as someone who represents these larger ideals? What does that responsibility look like and feel like for you?
So it's changed. So let's see. When I was awarded the medal in 2014, it was for 2013, 2014. Yeah, time goes by. It had been almost 6.5 years since the date of action, 9 November 2007. And really for a lot of years, I kind of struggled with how I was going to feel about it. There was always rumors about possibly receiving the Medal of Honor. But after that day and losing so many people I cared about and served with, an award's award. As somebody who serves, you don't hold any value to something that you don't understand. And so I continued. I just told myself, hey, if it happens, it happens. But I'm just going to keep moving forward with my life. Got out of the military, went to school, got an education, got a job, and then almost 2 weeks after I started my job, I got the call about the award. And a lot of things I hadn't thought of. I always thought about the guys that I served with, the guys that gave, their lives that day, and kind of collectively all what we went through, but I didn't really know how that responsibility would feel. And, as you said, when you are up on that stage, not too many people talk about it. There's a pretty intense, kind of media preparation and a lot of process that goes into that day. For Barack Obama, that was just another day for him. Which he's a funny guy, by the way. He's very personable. But when you stand up on that stage and it is that moment, and you start to, as Flo mentioned, see those Gold Star family members, see the wives of your friends that were killed and their children and stuff like that, you start to kind of all just clicked. And really, when the award was put on, I didn't even really think about myself at that point. The only thing that kept going through my mind is it was almost just a series of conversations, of laughs, and just all these things that I shared with those guys, and images from that day that they'll always be in my head, stories that we've told since then amongst those who survived, and really it wears heavy. It wears heavy because each time, even this morning when I got myself together, but I didn't really get myself together because I forgot my belt. I don't know, whatever. But so when you have a case, an awards case that says Medal of Honor, and that's where you keep your medal, and each time I open that case and touch the medal, put it around my collar and make sure it's sitting the way it should be, I always think about it, and not a single time goes by that I don't think about the names of the guys that we lost that day. I still think about my personal role in that, and even to this day I still do the things that you're always told not to, the shoulda, woulda, couldas. If I just would have done this, this part wouldn't have happened, or that guy might still be here. And I always think about that, but it was at an event similar to this that somebody from the audience came up and talked to me afterwards, and was like, thank you for all you did. Like, it's an amazing story. How'd you do all that? And really, kind of touching on what Flo was saying too, what people don't understand is literally in that moment, you're just doing everything that you know how. Like, you're not doing anything great. You are just falling back on your training, and you're doing exactly the job you're supposed to be doing. And really, nobody's, there's people out there that I look up to in the military that just everything they do in the military is just perfect. They're just the star example of what a soldier should be. But to me, I was an average soldier going up to that moment. But what I did do is I learned my job from the leadership that was above me. They taught me their jobs. They taught me everything that I would need to know exactly for that situation. And so having this conversation, as maybe 10 minutes had passed, they looked at me and said, so it sounds like you just did the best you could. And I've always thought about those words. And really, that's what we all did that day, is, did our jobs the best we could. We deployed as a team, and we grew into a family of people that just relied on each other for everything. They had their backs, you had theirs. And really, we came together when it hit the fan, and we decided that, they're not going to take this day. And so I've always kind of had a little comfort in the feeling that every single person that was part of that patrol, the guys that gave their lives that day, the guys that were wounded and are still living today, all the support personnel that were behind the scenes providing air support, providing, rescue coordination, everything, everybody gave all that they could. And we made it through that day because we didn't give up. And that's just the one thing that kind of, as I look in the mirror every day and put this medal on, I have learned to get some comfort through, is knowing that we all gave what we had.
What Kyle hit is that number 2 bullet that I'd mentioned earlier, the taking care of your people. And it's, when you're in command, it's a very demanding job. It doesn't matter what size element that you're leading at the time. You're a band of brothers, and you're willing to give your life for each other. I'd like to just say something and add on top of what he said earlier, is that your life really changes, believe it or not, just like that, after the presentation of the medal is put on you. And I'll never forget what General Lou Wilson told me afterwards, who was also a Medal of Honor recipient. He said, Jay, let me just tell you one thing. It's harder to wear the medal than to have earned it. And I said, wow. And it took me about a couple months to realize what he said. The demand that's upon us every day is heavy. The letters come in, the phone calls come in. Everyone wants you to be somewhere, and you can't do it all. And the best advice that I can pass on to the younger gentleman here is that, and it was good advice that I received from Walt Ehlers, which is Kathy's father, World War II Medal of Honor recipient in the landing of Europe. And he says, Jay, you've got to be able to learn how to say no, because you can't do it all. And that's some advice I'll leave the two of you. And it's tough to say no, because the memories of what you just went through is you'll never forget that the rest of your life. Never. And but you do the best you can, but you can't do it all. And but when it's something like you all that are before us right here, right now, to me, this is the most valuable thing that we can possibly participate in, because we're talking to the future of America. And I hope that from each of us that you'll take away something that you'll remember from our discussions about leadership, integrity, patriotism, citizenship, and so forth. I really do. And to the teachers, wow. Thank you for what you're doing. I just don't know how in the world our nation hasn't been able to really elevate our educational system to be the best in the world. And it's all money. But to me, what you're seeing right here with these two gentlemen is that, yes, it's difficult to wear the medal. You're in demand. Your life changes. You can't stand on the table and drink beer. You have to be a nice guy. You know?
I'll counter that.
Or Canada.
Counter that too.
I knew that was coming. It's that younger generation.
Oh,
They can still dance. But no, I mean it. Yeah, you're in the spotlight. You really are, and it's very demanding. And I just wanted to add that on top of what you said. Very demanding.
Who had the Harry Potter ringtone?
yeah, right there. Right there. Integrity.
Where is it?
Good movies.
Yeah.
Great books.
When that's on, it's like that's all that's on in my house because my wife's like, well, you haven't seen this. I was like, we've watched this a dozen times. Like, well, it's different this time.
It's better. It gets better with each viewing. So I have one more question, then I want to make sure we got a lot of students who I'm sure have questions they would like to ask. So here's what I'll do. I'm going to ask, if you're a student and you have a question, please raise your hand. There are members from the team who are going to be scattered throughout the audience with microphones, and they'll get you set up. And I'm going to ask one more question before we go to our students. And this one I'm going to direct towards Flo here. And this one, I looked up the etymology of the word intrepidity. Because in the citations it says distinguished himself by acts of gallantry and intrepidity, and I'm asking you this one because it comes from a French word, and I'm going to he's looking at me. But the French word intrepide, which I think I don't know if I'm saying that right or not, but from the 16th century, means unmoved by danger and undaunted. And I know that one of the questions that students ask all the time, and this ties into your what you talked about earlier, was courage. How do you, in the moment or when you're in combat, summon up the courage to act in the way that you need to? And for you, was it a case of you had courage, or was it a case of, Kyle just talked about your training kicks in? What's the difference between being courageous and doing the right thing, and what happens, once you get into a situation where your life's at risk?
It's, people say courage. 3 seconds, 8-second background. So I wrote a book called 8 Seconds of Courage. I was faced with a suicide bomber, and I ran towards him and tackled him to the ground. He detonated and killed 4 of my brothers, Commander Sergeant Griffin, Major Gray, Major Kennedy, and Reagan Abdel Fattah. And people always ask, what were you thinking? How did you react to this threat and go towards this threat? And I tell them, well, first of all, I really wasn't thinking. I was doing my job. My job from day one since I got in the military is, go towards danger. Right? That's why cover me while I move with your brothers. So, 1-on-1. You're literally running towards bullets, and you're hoping that your buddy's going to cover you when you're doing so. Why? Because the faster you're close towards danger, the closer you are to eliminate the threat. In this case, it was just a threat, and I saw this man, and I realized he was a bad guy, and when I held him and I knew he had a suicide vest on, all I could think about was, I need to throw this man as far away as possible, as quickly as possible, because he's about to hurt my friends. He's about to kill the boss. So, not courage, 100% training, obviously, but it's love. People, I'm hearing more about it now, but love of brotherhood and sisterhood. The fact that you're willing to put your life on the line day in and day out, night in and night out, for the folks around you. The fact that you feel guilty when you live and they don't. And that can potentially change the entire course of your life in a negative way, unless you get the right support system. It's love. And to me, that was the easiest decision I've ever made in my life at that moment, which was to go out there and make sure that my friends lived. And if I died, then so be it. I ran a personalized security detail. The rules of the game were simple. Protect the boss, which is Colonel Mingus, and Command Sergeant Major Griffin at all costs. So if it meant that during the course of an action, I died and they lived, then, ladies and gentlemen, that's a good day at work. That's a successful day at work. Why? Because they earned that security. They've been doing it for years, decades, serving over and over. And that person, those two individuals, they were leaders at that point. And my job was to protect them. And I lost one of them. And I lived. And that, to me, was the toughest thing to digest forever. So I carry them here. I carry our folks here who are 20s veterans who commit suicide every day here, because I understand how tough that guilt is, that coulda, shoulda, woulda is. And then when you add substance to it, it becomes a killer. But love, 100%. I'll say this too. No enemy, no Al-Qaeda, no Taliban, ISIS wasn't there at the time. Nobody, no Chechens, nothing was tougher than my own mind. That's the hardest enemy that I had to defeat. And like anything else in life, if you think you can do it all alone, you're wrong. Be open with yourself. Be honest with yourself. And talk to people. And every one of us, we go through our own issues. You might be bullied. You might be benched on a soccer team when you think you should be the starter. You might be doing bad in school because you have an issue and you're embarrassed about it. Or you might have gone through something that's just not appropriate. And you feel ashamed because you went through it. Talk to someone about it. If you don't, then that evil or that situation will defeat you. Be open about it. Like I'm open to you. I tried to figure out a way to kill myself in 2012. That's embarrassing, that's uncomfortable to say, right? I'm a Division I athlete, Army Ranger qualified, multiple tours, led men in combat, got shot, got blown up, all that good stuff. And here I am in a moment of weakness trying to figure out what's the easiest route. And that answers your question, almost. I almost quit. But instead, I challenged myself and I did the toughest thing I could do, which was I opened up and I allowed people in. And they found the light inside of my dark room. And today, I got a beautiful fiance, great career, amazing friends. I got a cat who just cost me $350 to clean his teeth. But he's 2 pounds lighter. I just found out this morning, you know. And most importantly, I got a purpose. And so to be something bigger. So,
thank you very much. Okay, it looks like I'm going to go. Do we have a question in the back there with you, Courtney?
Yeah. Hi, my name's Dane Rhodes, and this is a question for any of you. I was wondering, how do you get over the fear of just in the moment you have to make that split-second decision of like making that sacrifice of tackling the man with the suicide vest or just running into the line of fire?
I'll just say 2 seconds. Trust your instincts, trust your training, trust yourself. Just go out there and do it. Especially in those type of moments, if I would have sat there and started thinking about what do I do, I wouldn't be here today. Not in the military, put a heck of a lot of time. It took a lot of my time to teach me how to be an effective soldier, an effective leader, and an effective follower. And when the moment came to it, I trusted my training and my instincts, and I just went to it. And so thank you, U.S. Army, and all those wonderful leaders who took us to Wyoming, Guernsey, and made us do all these overnight things, but it worked out.
For me, I remember a specific point. So we were ambushed on a trail, nowhere to go. And I remember after the initial no contact. I went through one magazine, went to reload, and I woke up a little bit later. And it wasn't until I talked to a buddy of mine that, RPG had hit by me, and I got, a little knocked out for a second. But I remember getting up and kind of getting myself oriented to the situation, and I just see nothing but, rounds impacting all around me. I see, Marine Sergeant Box that was with us, wounded, and I see my buddy Kane Schilling wounded. Guys, I see more guys getting hit, and I just know the seriousness of the situation. I know that this is probably it, and so, me being still able-bodied at that time, a little shook up, but still able to do my job, I knew that 2 guys near me could not do their job. They needed help. And so for me, I remember a specific point, kind of just getting my bearings and looking around and saying, okay, well, this is it. I'm going to die today. And I said, well, if that's the case, until that happens, I'm going to help out my buddies. Because I knew if the situation reversed, I know those 2 guys, they would have done the exact same thing for me. So really, every action that was done that day, I was originally a radio telephone operator. I was responsible for calling up all sorts of stuff. But in that moment, my job switched from being an RTO to being in a leadership position and being a medic. Mm-hmm. And so those 2 things, that was my job. And until I was hit and killed, I was going to do everything I could to make sure those guys got out of there. And once I made that decision, that's when that training kicked in, what I was talking about. It was just, this is what I need to do. Okay, that's done. Now what do I need to do? And that's how the day went.
I think you go back to that third bullet I left with a lot of you is don't ask anyone to do anything that you wouldn't do yourself. And in my case, I was a company commander in Vietnam, and mine was a 3-day battle nonstop. And I had the responsibility of going against 15,000 North Vietnamese, and our battalion was only 700, and yet we became very victorious. But a lot of decisions had to be made on my part, like Kyle was saying. I had naval gunfire artillery to bring in. I had the jets to bring in, Huey gunships, artillery, mortars, and so forth, and supporting arms that I had to coordinate. Fear is always with you, but the training that you have prepared yourself for and that the military prepares you for, you just about, in any crisis, you can put it all together. Not everyone can do it. I'll be honest with you. I have seen some that cracked is a word they used in heavy fighting, but the pressure got to them. And it's sad to see that, but a good example is Barney Barnum, one of our other recipients. Barney he was an artillery officer who had to pick up the radio and continue on the battle against the North Vietnamese in Vietnam because his leadership was all killed just like that. But it's that taking care of your men is your number one responsibility. And just like Carl says, you're going to fight until death to ensure that your men survive or that you all go. But that's just the way you're trained to do that. It's tough decisions to make on a battlefield. They're not easy. I had Marines that didn't sleep for 38 hours. 38 hours, and then we went into continued fighting for 3 days, back and forth. And I can't believe, some were just 19 years old, 20 years old. They were the toughest little son of a guns I think I've ever led in my life. They were not afraid of anything. And decisions on the battlefield are very, very difficult. Not everyone can make them.
You know what's interesting also, it's the fact that I always asked myself this question, and I was terrified about this question. Who will I be when that moment happens? Will I be the guy that's deer in headlights? Will I seek shelter, self-preservation, or will I do my job and potentially die? And I promise you one thing, I don't care what training you've gone through, how badass you think you are, whatever your level in a Call of Duty is, you know?
Love Call of Duty.
Or Battlefield. You don't know until that moment happens. And it's a sigh of relief, you know, when you react a certain way. And then when you look around you and you see that 90% of your guys have done the same thing, you're kind of like, wow, but you're right. Some folks just, at a certain moment, it's just too much. And that's human nature.
It really is. It's very demanding, very demanding.
Okay, I think we have a, thank you very much for that question.
That's why we tell you never quit school, whatever you do. All three of us will tell you that 20 times a day. Never quit school. Drugs, don't even touch those puppies. Don't even get involved in that stuff. And the biggest thing that I have found, and I travel through a lot of the schools like they do, but I have found one of the weaknesses that I have really, really like to change just like that, and I can't, is that you all need to really start communicating with each other. Doesn't matter who you are, but make friends now, because I'll tell you what, you'll have friends for the rest of your life. I'm still talking weekly, and some of the guys that I went to the first grade with. You know, of course, I came from a little town where all of us went through 12 years of school together, but communicate with each other, talk with each other. They brought up a good point. If you think you have a problem, boy, come forward. Get hold of your teacher, say, I'm being bullied, or I've got a problem. And it could be a little bit post-traumatic stress or stressful things. Being a student today, in my eyes, is very difficult. I never see anybody smiling anymore. And I watch kids going into school. I watch them climb these hills with a backpack on their back, and they're all got their heads down, and they're not even talking to each other.
Because they're texting. We're FaceTiming right here. We're talking, just FaceTiming.
But you're all, right now, you know, you should never leave school at the end of when you finish high school. You should know every one of your classmates the best that you can. Make good friends now, because I'll tell you what, they'll come back for a loan from you in the future.
Yeah, I'm coming back for some of them. You know, 20-year reunions coming up. I remember some of them that weren't so nice. I'm going to be like, where you at now? What do you do? Oh, that's so cool. And I'm just kidding. No, I was that guy.
You know, one thing I will say is that you can tell how old I'm getting, but I can remember as a pup, teachers and governors and whoever the guest speakers were kept saying, you're the future of America. And I used to go, yeah, right. You know what? By God, it's true. You are the future of America. You're the ones. There could be a president sitting in here somewhere. We don't know that. The thing is push forward with your lives and enjoy your life, and keep a positive attitude. Stay away from the negative ones. If you got somebody that's negative around you, let him go fishing. But be positive in everything you do. And don't be afraid to fail. Hell, I did. Second grade. Second grade. And the reason I failed is my mother, we went to meet the ship one time to meet one of my brothers coming back from World War II, and we stayed a little too long, so they kept me into the year of the second grade. It wasn't academically, it was my mother's fault. Go ahead.
We also have, we're going to go here in just a second. I have a really quick question that came in online. This one's specifically for you, Flo, I guess. The online audience is dying to know, what's the name of your cat?
Guy Ranger.
Guy Ranger.
He's 11 pounds. He lost 2 pounds in the course of the last 6 months. I'm very proud of that. He's not happy. He is not happy. And he just, you know how I know he's not happy? He peed all over my car today. Yeah, I got him though. It's cool.
Excellent. Thank you for our online audience. We have a student over here with a question for one of our recipients.
My name is Madison Lee, and I'm representing Vista Fundamental Elementary. and my question is for Kyle White, and it is like, what was the best part about winning the Medal of Honor? Wearing the Medal of Honor.
The best part? Probably still looking for that. Well, I think it's opportunities like this. Being able to, share the story of, that day and, the story of the guys that made the ultimate sacrifice in defense of our country, and then also just getting to know people, because, I'm, lucky enough to be able to travel all over the country and have conversations with groups like this. And I think just collectively, the interactions and, really like what's happening, at schools all across the country is just, it's probably the part I enjoy the most. And, it's funny, I was at a school in Boston back in December, and some of the questions that were asked from 6th, 7th, 8th graders, I'm like, I wouldn't even have thought of that in college. So it's like, it must be teaching you guys good. But I'd say just the experiences and being able to engage, share the story, help the memories of the guys that gave their lives that day stay strong in giving back to the community is definitely the part I enjoy the most.
Thank you. Good question.
Hi. Mr. Groberg.
Oh, wow. I haven't been called that in a long time.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so you came from France. So what was that like coming from France to serve another nation's country?
That's a great question. First of all, it was easy, because if you look at the French Army and the United States Army, you got a clear choice on that one. Though, I might have had second thoughts after my first tour, when we were in Bagram and I saw the French, Army partying and drinking beer and offering me a beer and saying, you know what, I really want to have this beer right now, but I can't do it. And they eat a little bit better than we do. But, I told this, so I had to renounce my French citizenship before I could go into the military. And I went to the French embassy in Washington, D.C. to do so. And I met this wonderful lady, and she asked me why I wanted to renounce my French citizenship. And I told her the reason is, I want to join the military, and I need to get a clearance, security clearance, and to do so, I can't pledge loyalty to two nations. And then she asked me a question. She said, well, why don't you join the French Army? And at the time, my teachers used to always say, Flo, think before you speak, right? And there's a reason why they said that. Because usually what comes out of my mouth is not the smartest thing. But in this case, I was so happy. In the military, you learn this thing. It's called, that means pay attention. That's going to be on the test, or there's something that we're going to ask you to do. And all I could think about, I didn't have that in the military at the time, but I could think of my teachers. Like, oh, this is that moment where I'm supposed to stop, think, be tactful, and give the proper answer. Why? Because this lady literally had the power to keep me French, So, and I told her, I said, ma'am, here's the situation. I came here in 1994. I was, 11 years old, about to be 12, and this is in 2006, right? So I've lived the majority of my life in the United States of America. My father, who adopted me, is an American. My sisters are American. My friends are American. I grew up in this country. If I had done so in France, right now, today, I would be joining the French Army. The reality is I want to go out there and fight with my brothers and sisters. I want to go out there and join my friends in Iraq or Afghanistan. I want you to give me the opportunity to serve my country. And she looked at me and she had tears in her eyes. She said, okay. And then she signed a piece of paper. I signed it. It took the French government 2 years to give me my paperwork. But it was the reason that I joined this country's military. I was a naturalized citizen. This nation gave me the opportunity to call myself an American. I went from green card to, a citizen document. And so who am I to be here and not give back and not earn the right to call myself an American? Gave me the honor, and so the only thing I could do was serve our nation in a time of war. Wouldn't trade that second for a second. Wouldn't do it over. I would do it over the exact same way. I wouldn't change that. And I met some of my best friends in the world, and then because of my service in the military, and because I got blown up, believe it or not, I got to meet my future wife. And so that's a positive, and it's been the best decision of my life.
Okay, we're going to go here to Courtney, and then we'll go upstairs next. So down here and then up there.
My name is Heavenly, and I represent Topaz Preparatory Academy. And my question is for Flo. If you can go back to the war, would you change anything you have done?
Wow, that's a question we could probably all answer, right? I tell you what, I went through that scenario a million times. I go through it on random time. Today, randomly, I'll be thinking about it. And when I see I read about other people's stories, or I get to watch a movie or have a conversation with folks, I would try to get there a little bit faster on the day of the action. But I think that every single experience, positive and negative, shaped me to the person that I am today and allowed me to react a specific way on that day. If I could trade anything, it would be my life for the ones of my brothers. But, it's every step, every breath, every decision that we make, we should be proud of that decision, good or bad, because it gives us an opportunity to learn something about ourselves and the people around us. That's what shapes us. That's why being a human being is a privilege, and that's what the God upstairs has for us. And so, own it. What do you guys think?
I wouldn't change anything. I have yet to really tell my story of Gulf 2-4, better known as the Magnificent Bastards. That was our motto, although we did have fathers. But the thing that, no, I have not really. I got publishers and movie guys wanted to make a story on Golf Company, and I just we're kind of holding it back. And the citation tells it all. The stories have leaked out, but what my Marines went through, I don't know if people would really believe what I would tell them and what they would tell them. We're going to meet on our 50th anniversary here at Quantico, Virginia pretty soon. And we come together. About 40 of us have survived. But the thing is that we haven't really told our story. General Livingston or Jim Livingston has told portions of what the 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines went through. And I've listened to many of them. But like I said earlier, from my eyes and from their eyes of those that we survived, we haven't come out with it yet, but we're going to. I don't know if people are really going to believe what those Marines, what we did in 3 days. Without sleep, out of ammunition, with actually fighting hand to hand with the enemy. So it'll come out. It's not pretty, but I'll just give you one sample. If you saw the movie called Platoon, at the very end of that movie, there was this horrible, ugly battle that took place. They used a lot of our story. But nope, I wouldn't change a thing, and neither would any of my surviving Marines.
Hi, I'm Angel, and I represent from Apollo High School. But this subject was touched upon a little bit, and it's about love. And a lot of people don't realize that a lot more that comes into love than just one thing. and I wanted to know what defines love to you guys.
You want to go?
All right, go ahead. That's a loaded question. There.
It's a great question. For me, love is willing to sacrifice something that potentially you couldn't. It's sacrifice it all for someone. Like right now, I would sacrifice everything for Carson, right? And maybe Guy Ranger, but till he peed in my car today. But it's about understanding that there's something that's greater than you and people around you, surrounded by you, and individuals. It's about moments and memories and cherishing those. It's about wanting to be someone else potentially for someone else. It's about wanting to make sure that they're healthy, they're good to go. And in the military, it's making sure that you're doing your job every single day, that you're not complacent, because one thing that will happen to you is when someone gets killed, you're going to start looking at yourself really quickly to see whether or not you're part of that reason they got killed. But also, you're willing to do everything. That's why you read those stories about individuals who, not just in the military, but like the teacher running down the hallway to go talk to the gunman, or the firefighters that will run into a building and save someone and potentially not come back themselves, or the mother that will shelter her daughter or son, little baby. It's just something that's unexplainable. Love is what we are all about. I don't think there's a specific definition for it, but it's how you feel and what you're willing to do for something else or someone else that is so crazy that potentially it's giving away your own life for it. And it's about appreciating, too. And I think that's one thing that I see in our younger generation. I can't believe I just said that. So weird. But and I was just the same way. I didn't appreciate what I had in front of me, and that's why I try every single day to, call my father or talk to my father, because I know he's 80 years old. He's gone through a lot of things, and he was my biggest influencer in life. And then the day he's gone, a big part of me is going to be gone. And I want to make sure that I treasure that love that we have with each other while he's still on the ground. No worries about it. I'll still love him the same way, if not more, when he's gone, because we'll see each other again. But it's about understanding that piece. 10 years ago, I would have just not picked up the phone for months and then get that phone call, and I would have regretted it. That's just me. I mean, it's a crazy answer. I went all over the place for it. You got me. You're good. Thanks, Kyle.
I'd add a little bit to that. I'd say, for me, love means two things. It has to do with two things. I think family and service. So with family, I recently, me and my wife had our first kid, Sophia, back in July. And, yeah, thank you. And I didn't really, people talk about, oh, kids change your life, kids change your life. I was like, yeah, I'm okay. Because I didn't understand it. I grew up as an only child. I didn't really, have, that much involvement. Me and my parents were close and stuff like that, but, didn't really kind of understand the whole interaction with that. And when she was born, it was immediately life-changing. Ever since then, it's just, every new thing she does is just absolutely incredible. It's a miracle, and I've never love something so much. And so, I'm hesitant. We're thinking about having another kid, but it's I don't know if I can love another kid. It sounds terrible to say, but she's everything. And then service. I touched a little bit on it earlier, kind of how when you get to a unit that you're going to be deploying with, you start off as teammates, and then you start off as friends, and then with a few people, you might become best friends. But really, there's a point in deployment, and especially if you guys have exchanged some battles with each other, they really don't even become friends. Isn't even a term. They're really your family. And to me, it was just by the end of our deployment, I realized that we hadn't even thought about our mission in a while, originally why we were going to this place or what we were doing as a whole. It was really we were family, and our mission was just get each other home. And to me, like, speaking of love, like, there's no greater love than those that you have for your brothers. And obviously for the ones that gave their lives in defense of freedom and everything that we enjoy as a people. And then on the opposite side of that, the question was asked earlier, what's, the best part about wearing it? So I've, as we all have, we've come across people through various, appearances, events, that people devote their entire lives to causes that they believe in. I was speaking at something called JDRF, which is Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. And I met about 5 or 6 people that I just was so impressed by. I spent the night, with dinner, having dinner with them and having some drinks with them and just talking, because they have literally, I think collectively they'd all devoted about between 30 and 40 years of their lives doing nothing but supporting this charity. And it was their life. Everything that they cared about had to do with, some of them have family members that were affected by diabetes, whatever it may be, but they chose to devote their entire life to supporting a cause that was greater than themselves. And to me, if that's not, a shining example of love for not only what they do, but love for people that they may not even interact with, then I don't know what it is. So.
And then we have enough time. We're going to take one last question here before we wrap up. So,
hi, I'm Rachel Birdie from Cedar Middle School, and I had a question for Colonel Varkas. What is some good information that you can give for a middle schooler to help understand sacrifice?
What is some good information you could
The
give
importance of sacrifice.
to help understand what is sacrifice?
Okay, I guess the question is what would I give comments on to your middle level, school levels, students on sacrifice? Sacrifice is a toughie. In sacrificing your friendships at your level right now, in going out of your way to make you and them the closest team in your class right now, is one of the sacrifices that you could start right now. Yourself among your peers and your fellow students. I think that's what you want me to say, is that right now, how would I have you sacrifice at your level? I think that's the best way I would propose, that you go all out in bringing your class together and start communicating and start talking about not only just your education, but start thinking about the future, 5 years ahead. I was always taught that, think 5 years ahead. And start doing that now. And the big thing in sacrificing yourself in your class, if there is a student that needs a little help, you're the one, and your group will go all out to reach down. If you're at the top of the class, don't ever hesitate to reach down here and grab Jay Vargas. That happened to me. I was pulled up. So I hope I've answered your question. Have I?
Can I jump on that?
Yeah, one more bullet.
Okay. All right.
Before she runs off, there's one thing I want to tell all the students, or ask of you, is that when you get back into your class tomorrow or whenever, I'd like to have each of you write down on a piece of paper, don't sign it, and just say, how could I improve my school? That's question number one. How can I improve the solidification or improve the friendship among my fellow students? 2 questions. Just write them down and hand them to the teacher or put them in a hat, and then let her and him take over. And speaking of taking over, I admire all the ladies who came forward with a question. What's wrong with you guys?
Yeah, a couple.
You know, I know you've got a ton of questions. And I was the same way. I was very hesitant to ask a question every once in a while, but you're the men of the future. You need to work with each other. And I hope I've answered your question. I really do. I see you nodding your head, so I guess I made some pathway, but go ahead, Flo.
Yeah, I just think that you're at that age where you're going to be faced with a lot of decisions which revolves around popularity and following the cool kids. And this is going to be your biggest sacrifice is, what are you going to do? Are you going to pretend to be someone else so that you can fit in? Or are you going to just look at them and say, you know what? That's just not for me. And you're going to trust me. You will find people just like you. And instead of, hiding in a corner, go find those individuals and create your own little world and just have fun. I was never part of a clique. I was one of those, guys that just walked around. I was an athlete. I would hang out with the preps. I'd hang out with the nerds, right? I mean, we all had names, right? I was the funny-looking guy with a weird accent that got put in a locker when I was a freshman, right? But I was a pretty good soccer player and runner, so that I didn't care. But I never did it to anyone else. But I had friends around me. But it's all about the biggest sacrifice you're going to have to do, you're going to have to make is who you're going to be. And you're going to hear things that just from your family that you're going to look at them and say, you're crazy, right? I mean, I was 13 years old. I looked at my mom, she was, right? Guess what? She really was. So I was justified over the years. But the reality is, I made some decisions that got me in a locker. And I didn't care. I stood by my ground. A lot of my friends didn't. And then they come back to you eventually and say, you know what? I wish I would have done this differently. Be true to yourself.
I think what is that?
Baby? Baby.
She looks like a very strong leader, and I got a good feeling that she's going to bring her group together, and that's what I emphasized earlier. Communication is sort of a lost art in our society today, and I think that's one of our weaknesses, that especially at your level right now, if you will start communicating and helping each other out and taking care of each other and setting the example and helping those that need a helping hand, and reach down and grab them and bring them out. And that's the beauty of the character development program that the Medal of Honor recipients have put together and endorsed, and we're taking it through 40. We're into 40 states right now. We had 70 presentations last year, and then, my God, we've trained 13,000 teachers and supervisors and principals. And the beauty of this program is that we have found that it really is a very important program throughout our nation right now. And it's needed, and it's something that we saw that was lacking. No one was talking about character. They weren't talking about integrity. They weren't talking about democracy or leadership, and that's why this program is so valuable. So each of you, and I know many of you are going through the program right now, and enjoy it and really dig into it, because I've had teachers come up to me and say, you know what, Bobby Joe, and I'll just use that name, Bobby Joe hasn't spoken in my class for about half the year, and once we started going through with the character development program, we can't shut him up. And one little girl came up to me one time and said, you know what, Jay, is that this is the first time that anyone has ever told me what Grandpa did in Vietnam or World War II or Afghanistan, or et cetera. It's amazing. So dig into that program. It's solid. It's so popular right now that it's in demand. And now we're at the elementary level. And I'll tell you, it's very demanding there.
Yeah, well, oh,
I'd like to add one
Thank
thing.
you.
So,
No, you're good. Yeah.
So to the question about sacrifice, I think if you're looking for examples of sacrifice and trying to understand it at your level, that would be an excellent conversation to have with your parents. And what I mean by that is, I didn't understand this until I had a kid, but instantly it's like, you have, oh yeah, we're gonna go vacation here this year, and then you start thinking, well, college is only 18 years away. We got to start putting some money away for that because it's astronomical how much it costs. But I think that's a good thing is talk to your parents about maybe some examples of things that they might have sacrificed that you might not have thought about before, and I think that's something that could be a good little exercise, because then that's something that you deal with, and your parents can kind of tell you about their lives a little in ways that they might not have told you about before.
So we've learned a lot today. We've learned about integrity and the importance of never doing something or never asking your men to do something that you couldn't do. We've learned about courage and not taking the easy way out and the perils of cat ownership. We've learned about the importance of accepting responsibility for your actions, good or bad. And we learned about love in a way that we probably haven't thought about it before. We probably think about love romantically, but today we heard about the power of love between brothers and sisters, the love of a family, the love of your country. One of the things that President Reagan always said that strikes me now and here in this conversation is that freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction, and that each generation has a responsibility to preserve it and pass it on to the next. So in your service to our country, you preserved it through your service in warfare, and now through your work in education and working with these students here, you're passing it on from one generation to the next. So please join me in thanking our Medal of Honor recipients. Thank you very much. Thank you.